Thanksgiving today, Jewish Family Service is thrilled to have Talia Meyerowitz here presenting to us today, her Thriving Through Change. I'm just going to ask that everyone stays muted during the presentation, though Talia will be asking for your participation in a number of different ways through the chat. And with that, I'm just going to do a little bit of introduction of my good friend Talia. So Talia Meyerowitz is a dynamic coach, facilitator, and change agent who creates experiences that help leaders and teams stretch their limits and expand their efficiency. Talia is known for her engaging personality, authenticity, warmth, candor, and her lively approach. She has worked with organizations of all sizes across the country, spoken at national and international leadership conferences, and is president and founder of www.arespectfulworkplace.com. Talia, Jewish Family Service is thrilled to have you here today. Thank you so much for providing us with this opportunity, and we're thrilled to hear what you have to say.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenny. It's so exciting when you have people you love in amazing leadership positions making such impact on our community. So I am truly, truly honored to be doing this today and just really excited to be here with all of you. Thanks for spending the hour with me. I know in Rochester, it's beautiful outside. So I hope after our time together, everyone can get outside for some fresh air. I'm just going to make sure. So I have to tell you, this is one of my absolute favorite topics to talk about. And I absolutely always want to, I feel like this is one of those topics where I could just come in here and say, the only thing that is constant is change and get up and leave. You know, it's sort of a mic drop moment. But there's a reality in that, right? The only thing that keeps happening is change. And certainly we have been in a time where there has been so much change, right? We have a global pandemic that's been killing people. We have a social and racial reckoning. You know, the political atmosphere has been chaotic. There's a vaccine now. Everyone has experienced this change differently. But I think this is a great time to spend an hour to think about how we ourselves deal with change, because it's certainly under a microscope right now, and really how people around us do. So I think, you know, there have certainly been times where I think everyone I know, I had a friend say, you know, it's so strange. Typically, when I'm anxious about something, the people around me aren't. And all of a sudden, I'm in a situation where everyone is feeling anxiety on some level. And I think it does ebb and flow, right? And everyone experiences it differently. But I think what's been happening, I think we've all had those moments where we look like this, where we kind of just want to close down and take a minute, and it can feel totally and completely overwhelming. Oops, I keep losing. Oh, there we go. So I just thought we'd start today taking a breath. I have to force myself. I grew up with parents who just told me always to breathe. So as we go into this, as centered as you can be and as focused you can be on thinking about how you deal with all this stuff, the better. So this image was the best image that I've found related to what I feel has been happening since March. It's like there's this cyclone that just keeps spinning, right? There's all the changes that we experience normally, right? I always laugh. We could spend probably the next hour coming up with songs that have the word change in it. And I feel like if you can find a lot of songs with the word, you know it's important. I listened to Dave Bowie changes all morning to prep for this on repeat. But there's this cyclone coming at us. And I think there are ways in which we can handle the change better and move forward through it better. And some of that is going to be just through understanding. So this is my holistic belief. And I think this is sort of the foundation that I want us to think about today. The reality is we do not see things as they are. We really see them as we are. So even using this moment, so my mom is on this call. This is actually the first time she's heard me speak. I think my husband's on this call. They are going to view this completely differently than those of you who don't know me are. right? We see everything through our lens. If I remind you of somebody you really don't like, you're going to view that totally differently than my mom's going to view it as her daughter who she loves, right? So when it comes to change, when it comes to how we interact with other people in the world around us, everything is through our lens and everything is seen through our filter. So one of the things that I think can ground us as we struggle through change is I try to think of the things that remain constant. And I think the main constant that we can really hold on to is who we are and our values and what we believe. So regardless of the fact that, you know, my kids are remote and life is crazy and I have to wear masks and however I've interacted with what's happening, who I am and what's important to me has remained constant. And that can be tremendously grounding. So I have to tell you, it's not because my mom's on this call. Whenever I've spoken anywhere across the country, I talk about the way I was brought up and the way I was raised. These are my amazing parents. I believe this is in South Africa on Table Mountain, maybe. But I was raised very unusually, I think. So I was raised in a house where transparency and being completely open was truly celebrated. So I was allowed to talk about when I was unhappy. I was allowed to talk about when I was jealous, when I was hurt, when I was thrilled. And you can imagine in my teenage years how I had some difficulty because when I'd have an argument with a friend and they wanted to walk away, I wanted to talk about it and process it. But as I've gotten older, and the work that I do is really always through the lens of being open, being transparent, and being truly comfortable being vulnerable. And I think when we talk about change, that's one of the places we have to go. And really these values and the values that you all have. And one of the things I'm going to send out to you after today is a quick values exercise, because if you've never done it before, it can be really interesting to look at and really drill down to what your values are. But they're really at the foundation of everything. And they can truly provide us with some serenity and consistency throughout all this. So let's dive in. So I sent you all a change worksheet. And what I'm going to do, I don't know if all of you got a chance to do it. If you didn't, don't worry about it. This is a no stress hour. But going back to the idea that we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are, I wanted to think about some of the words that we associate with change. So I'm going to start with my favorite, and I'm going to ask you to put in the chat whether you've thought this word on an instant is positive or negative. So if you could just write positive or P or N or plus or minus, whatever's easiest for you. So I'm going to give you the word risk. How many of you, when you hear the word risk, think of it as positive or negative? I see them coming in negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive. Okay, so when you think about change and you think about it organizationally or society, you know, based on society, and someone says, wow, we're going to take a big risk. And I'm seeing there's really both in the filter. And we can think about whether or not different situations where that word would be different. But if you think about the word risk, when we talk about change, often the word risk starts floating around. We immediately associate it with something. So for me, I have to be honest, risk for me is like a positive, positive, positive. So if I'm coming in and I'm talking to you all, or you're watching a news story, or I'm leading your team or whatever it is, and I come in and I'm all psyched and I say, guys, we are going to take a really big risk today. You know, smiley face, so excited. I've already lost half of you. Because we automatically associate it based on how we view the world, our experiences in the past. So let's try another word. What if I tell you the word safe choice? I guess that's two words, the word safe choice, positive or negative? Again, I mean, it's so fast. I'm seeing both positive, not sure, negative, positive. So for me, when I see safe choice, I automatically associate it with a negative. So if I say to you all, guys, we're going to make the safe choice with this change, I'm totally bummed and the rest of you are totally relieved, or half of you are relieved, right? So I only bring this up, and it's interesting to think about, and I'm not going to take the time now. I mean, typically I'm in a room with people and we can engage in this way, but I really want to encourage you. This is something fun that you could do, is really go through after today and think about situations where you can challenge yourself. So if you thought that risk automatically associated it with negative, I want you to think about the fact that there's also situations where it's positive. You know, whatever it is, taking the risk of entering the lottery might feel differently than, you know, taking a risk that could be traumatic. So there's ways in which we can switch our brains and challenge our brains to think about these things all differently. So I want you to all think about, how do you feel about change? I'm laughing, I have to move this bar. How do you respond to change? Do you really dread it? Does it make you anxious? Does it make you frustrated? And if you would take a minute just to think of a one word, if I were one or two words, if I were to say to you, how do you respond to change? What would you say? Opportunity. Depends on what's changing, absolutely. And we're going to talk about that. I think it's really interesting, scares me, anxiety provoking. I think change is a real trigger word, and change could certainly have been, you know, change and risk. They both are real trigger words for people. And I think as we try to navigate through change, it's really important for us to think about how we respond to it. And I think that I love, someone just put anxiety and excitement, right? Sometimes it's both. You know, we don't know what's happening and we're waiting to see. So thank you, by the way, so much, all of you, for using the chat. So let's dive deeper into this. What do you think about, if I were to tell you all, I'm going to make a personal change? What words come to mind? I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to make a personal change, right? Growth, strength, right? I'm going to start doing planks every day. That's awesome, exciting, right? I'm taking control. Now, what if I were going to shift you all and say, what words come to mind when you think of an imposed change? So somebody's telling you all of a sudden, you got to wear a mask whenever you go to a store, or somebody's telling you that you're no longer sitting at this desk, we're actually going to move you over there, or whatever it is. Apprehension, anxiety, shame, right? We automatically assume, I use the word imposed, and we automatically, I think for the most part, it's right, annoying. Totally, it's annoying, it's irritating. So when I look at these two things, and I look at intentional change and imposed change, right? Intentional, my planks, you know, that I'm going to start having smoothies every morning, or I'm going to start reading or writing in my journal, right? These seem, when they're personal, as really conscious decisions. We have control over them. It's happening by me, right? When we look at imposed change, this implies decision without choice, right? And it often feels very sudden. And I think in the business world, because, you know, typically I'm working in organizations, there's always people in a room who know before, right? But for most of the people, for individual contributors within an organization, and for citizens within a city, country, world, it's sudden, it's unexpected, and it really feels like it's happening to us. So I just want, as a way to think about how you yourself handle change, is I think what's really powerful is to think about, what intentionality can you add to that experience, so that you can get more on the side that you do when you think about personal change. So I'll give you an example. You know, all of a sudden my kids were going remote. And my kids are social kids and they like to be around people. You know, this is back in March, schools closed, and they were going to have to find spaces to work. And I have kids who share rooms. And I could see there was just so, where are we going to do our work? There was so much anxiety and trepidation. So I knew I had to buy some desks. So I thought to myself, what can I do to help them with this change that I myself was struggling with, by the way, of course. And I let them all pick their own desks. I didn't go and order desks. My daughter picked, a white desk with gold legs, and my middle one picked a gamer desk. And I could see, it's so funny, but that piece of furniture made everything feel a lot better. So whenever there's a change, whatever intentionality we can put in as a way to feel that we have some control over it can be tremendously powerful. And I think in terms of the people around us, I'm sure many of you, like me, have friends and family that have really struggled with change in general, but really, right, we're under a microscope. This is like change on steroids, what's been happening. Is really asking, okay, you're right, this is awful if you feel it's awful, but what could make it easier? To really ask the question. And sometimes it can be something small. Does it solve it completely? Absolutely not. But are we going to let you choose and buy your own mask or whatever it is? Do you need during the workday to schedule in 20-minute walks so you don't go crazy now that the workplace and the home place are synonymous? Whatever it is, I think we need to really ask each other. And then there's opportunities where we can really sit together and brainstorm solutions. So we're going to do some live change action right now, and we're going to change it up. So I am going to ask all of you to cross your arms. Cross your arms, get yourself comfortable, get yourself in a good space. By the way, I do a lot of stuff on communication and body language, right? And crossing arms, what do people feel that means? You can throw it in the chat. I just made you uncross your arms, right? They're not listening, that they're closed off, whatnot. Sometimes I'm just cold. Okay, so go back to crossing your arms. All right, now what I want you to do, please, is uncross your arms, shake your arms down, and now I want you to cross them the other way. It's weird. Could you do it? It's funny, I can't see many of you, right? It's uncomfortable. That's a little bit of a change, and we're going to use that as an example. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you if you have a pen near you. If you don't, you can pretend, not the end of the world. I want you to practice writing your name. So sign your signature. And now I want to ask you to switch hands. And for the rest of the week, you are going to use your other hand to write everything, right? So try signing your name with your other hand. If you don't have a pen, ironically, I don't have a pen. I'm just practicing. Feels super strange, right? And lastly, I want you to sit as comfortably as you can in your chair. Get really relaxed, get really chilled out. This is your space. I can't see most of you, so however that is for you, enjoy every minute. All right, now I want everyone to stand up. Okay, we are going to stand the rest of today, and I don't want you to sit down for the rest of the day. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, everyone sit down. See, and I raised your endorphins for a moment. All right. So these are obviously little games. I have to be honest with you, when I do this in person, in case you are ever with me in person, I actually have, regardless, I did it in a room of 500 people. I made every single person in the room change their seat. And there were all these rules, right? We have to think of little changes. So let's think of using a different hand. And there's a guy named William Bridges. I've read a ton of books on change, and I've done a ton of research on change. And this is what makes the most sense to me through my lens, and I hope it works for you. So there's change, right? Change is the event. Change is standing up. Change is my telling you for the rest of the week that you are going to use your other hand to write. Now, I must say, I did just realize that most of us type. I was just thinking, wait a minute, I probably should have had you type with your toes, but just for thought's sake, we'll think about it. Okay, so the change is my telling you to write with your left hand. But if you don't emotionally transition to accept that, then you really haven't changed, right? When I have an entire room change where they're sitting, if they're still thinking about the seat that they got there early to get in, then they really haven't changed. They're really stuck because they haven't made the transition. So if you really think about it, if you don't actually give in to a change and you don't take yourself psychologically and emotionally there, then change really isn't happening. So William Bridges came up with this, and there's so many thoughts, but I'm going to explain this to you looking at the next image, right? We're going to look at becoming a parent. I love this picture. Those of you who have kids or know people who have kids, which I'm sure all of us do, this is real. So I want you to think about the beginning of change. And if you look at this, the percentage of people, this is looking at, mass groups of people that take certain amounts of time to deal with this. Across the bottom is time, and across the top is percentage of people. And if you look at this graphic, you can see that if you look at the first phase, which is ending, losing, and letting go, you can see for some people, they're still in it at the end when other parts of the population are already at this new beginning. So you think of ending, losing, go, right? You wait, you want a child, you're so excited and you're so blessed and you're so grateful. And then you have a newborn. And all of a sudden you realize that you don't sleep anymore, right? You don't sleep anymore. You don't have time with your partner. You don't have time for yourself. You don't go to the bathroom alone. And there's a feeling of you are letting go of your life before kids, or people who have a puppy say the same thing, right? It's like, well, I used to sleep and now I don't sleep anymore. So at that beginning, that's that picture. People are feeling bedraggled, and there's a feeling of excitement, but there's also a feeling of loss. When you think of any change involves loss, right? And then you get to that neutral zone. And that neutral zone is looking at when you're seeing someone and they're tired, but they've figured out how to prop up the bottle, and they're trying to see, like, can I hold the bottle with my foot while I, give the dog food? And like, if I carry my briefcase, does anyone even use a briefcase? Where did that come from? If I carry my bag and the car seat, can I balance it? And you're in this middle space, but nothing is feeling comfortable. And then you get to the new beginning. And I think of that when you see someone, holding their child while they're typing their novel, while they're drinking their coffee and doing their nails, right? They have everything all together. They have arrived. Oops, we're going the wrong way. Hang on. So let's go through these phases. So stage one, this is the ending, the losing, the letting go. And if you think about it, any emotional transition you're making, any transition that goes along with change, really starts with an ending. You are saying goodbye to the past. You are saying goodbye to writing with your dominant hand. You're saying goodbye to the seat that you're in. And the reality is that change really happens with loss. There's an automatic ending. And if you think about it, and let's think about the pandemic, right? Let's go through. So denial, what? We'll just, in a couple months, we'll be fine. It'll be totally fine. Anger, I'm so frustrated. I can't leave my house. My kids are home. Depression, oh my gosh, we are still home and we're still in it. And then you're starting to figure it out and you're saying, okay, well, maybe I can go out with a mask and I can stay away, but I'm not sure. And what if we meet outside? And then you get to the end where you say, okay, this is where we are. And you keep moving forward in that direction. And then, of course, as we know, because remember my first slide, the only constant is change, then we start again. And if we look at business, you know, it still follows this curve. And I always think about when all of our doctors switched from paper to e-record, right? And I think there was a mass consensus, this is not going to happen. This is not going to happen. And then the feeling of, this is such a waste of time, right? I can't be with my patients because I'm always sitting here trying to work this computer. And then you're trying to figure it out. Like, I guess I'll do it, but they're going to be sorry. And then you're finding that people didn't feel connected. And all of a sudden, they got towards the recognition that, wow, this really is working. This is tracking, and then they can move forward. And I think if you think of any change that's happened in your workplace, it follows this curve. So at the beginning, there's a time where we really need to, and I think for me as someone who is so open and really believes that we need to be vulnerable and talk to one another, this time, whether you're in the world or in your organizations, it's a time to talk about how people feel, right? Feelings are high when there's a change. And remembering that loss is very subjective. So I show this picture. We were in Napa at a family event, and we were outside of an ice cream shop, and my son, Josh, I have an older son, Max. I'm just talking about Josh today too, but so my son, Josh, got an ice cream cone. Okay. And we're sitting right outside the ice cream shop. And this enormous dog came up and grabbed and ate the ice cream cone out of his hand. I will say as an aside that Josh is still scared of dogs, right? So Josh went ballistic. He went crazy. And it was a very tame dog. This was not an aggressive attack. This was like, watching this guy, come over, and he took it. To Josh, this was the end of the world. Nothing could have been worse at this moment than having a dog come and take his ice cream. To us, we thought, we're literally right here in front of the ice cream shop. You didn't get hurt. It's no problem. We still have $5. It's going to be okay. When you think about loss, it really doesn't matter when it comes to change and loss, how you feel about it related to how others do. Because everything is through other people's lens. And I think when we think about, I've worked in many organizations where people have to move locations, right? Their desk changes, their office changes. And without fail, there are always people who that could not be more devastating. And there's always people who think that is about the most ridiculous thing that they have ever heard of. And why do people care? Right? People always seem to be overreacting when they respond more than we would. So I think that fear of, if one thing changes, what's next occurs, and it especially occurs at the beginning. So then we get into the middle. And this is that place in between two realities where we're all trying to navigate, right? The shock has sort of worn off. And now we're moving forward to try to figure out, how are we going to adapt and what are we going to do? And because of that constant changing, our anxiety goes up. And sometimes as a result, our motivation goes down. I mean, I think this is when all of us started really watching Netflix. Like all of a sudden we're home, right? I see people nodding because there's a reality. Thank God there's good TV out there right now. But what can happen because there's so much turmoil is that we're sort of in it and we're spinning. And I think during this time, people can become polarized because they're really experiencing things differently and they're trying to navigate that. Just realized I better keep a track of my time. And I think I just want to say that however we can normalize this time, it just is what it is. And there can be tremendous opportunity during this time. Because although it's uncomfortable, I view the world this way. I do think that when we can get out of our comfort zone, and change forces that every time, that's where some of the magic can happen. That's where innovation can happen. Think of what's happened during the pandemic. Think about Black Button Distilling that started making hand sanitizer, and how all of a sudden all these groups were sewing masks, and how businesses really shifted That's because they were in the middle. They were trying to figure out, how are we going to survive and how are we going to go forward? So it's really a time where we can all think about, how are we going to redefine ourselves? How are we going to come out in this change differently? And there is a reality that when things are really hard, there's opportunity. And there's opportunity because people are scrambling and trying to be creative. There's a huge growth of creativity as we're all trying to figure out how to navigate the change, right? As I'm trying to figure out, okay, what if I put Ella in this room and I put Josh here and they face away from each other, and how's that going to work? Okay, that didn't work. Well, maybe I need to start buying ice cream to give them a treat at lunch to get them more happy. I mean, whatever it is, right? We're trying to figure it out. And even though there are times where it's polarizing, here are opportunities to bring people together and to go back to asking that question: what could make this change better for you? What could we do to make this easier for you? So finally, we come to the end and we're at the new beginning. And that's when we feel like we can do this, right? Let's do this. I mean, I have to say, and I keep going back to masks because I think that's something that we're all figuring out and navigating, right? I felt like, how am I going to breathe with this thing? It just felt incredibly smothering. And I got to the point where I was like, you know what? It's going to be okay. I can do this. I can put this, I can even wear two. Kind of a big deal. So, so we get to that point. And I think what really aligns us as we navigate through change is feeling that we have a purpose, right? I'm doing this because I'm aligned to the fact, we change where our desks are because that's what's going to help workflow. Or, I'm wearing masks because I want to protect the people around me, whatever it is. That's what makes us really feel good. And if you're helping other people through change, helping them understand why, I think there was certainly within the business world, leadership and the decision makers used to sort of exist. I always think of like Rapunzel's castle, Rapunzel's tower, up in a tower, totally away, and then they would tell the masses. And certainly, look, there's some situations we're all living in right now across the country and the government and life where that does still happen. But when you think about leadership today, you think about the fact that we really do need to tell people why. People can align to a change if they understand the purpose and what their individual purpose is related to it. So that also tends to build trust. So if you are making sure people are with you and get what they're doing, they're still going to travel through the curve on their own time. But at the end, there's going to be trust. So I wouldn't be me if we didn't talk about communicating during change. So the bulk of my work is really looking at how to bring people together. How can we truly effectively communicate? How do I know that what I'm saying is what you're getting? So I think at the end of the day, we really are how we treat each other. When you think of places you're happy, workplaces where you're happy, it's usually where you feel you're treated well, right? When you think of social situations, it's when you feel you're treated well. So that's paramount. So I believe that if we really get to a place, and especially during times of change where I think there has been a unifying vulnerability right now, a unifying anxiety right now, we really need to talk to each other and we need to really encourage ourselves to keep talking. So I'm going to ask you, when you think about communication, it's made up of three things. My communicating to you right now. So one of them is words. And I'm going to ask, what are the other two things? If you would put it in there's two more things that make up communication. If you want to take a second to put it in the chat. Body language. Absolutely, Jackie. And there's one more. Listening, yes, but I'm talking about as the communicator. Tone. So we're going to say communication is made up of words, body language, and tone. I'm going to ask you to put in what percentage of communication is words. And I'm going to take a sip of water while you put that in. 10%, 30%, 45, 50. So words make up, across the board of research, 7% of communication, which I find to be so fascinating, especially when we're in a technological society, right? So the rest of communication is body language and tone. So even on this Zoom, right? It's such a different thing. It's such a different thing, but how do you know who I am? How am I communicating to you? Yes, I'm giving you information, right? We need words. Words are important and the words we use matter. But my guess is you're getting a sense of me by the way my voice changes. You're getting that I care about this. You're getting that I care that you're all here. I mean, I truly do. And you can see, I still try to move my body a little so that you can really feel what I'm feeling and what's happening. Now, we live in a technological society. So what do we use in texts to let people know how we feel? Someone throw it in the chat. What do we use when we're all texting away? Emojis, right? Have you ever scrolled through and you can't find the right one? Right? So you're like, ice cream cone, smile, lightning, you know, what does it mean? We live in a world where we are taking communication down to a minimal. So it's critically important that we remember that, especially if you think about on Zoom, you know, so much of us are spending our time on Zoom, or if you think of the fact that our faces are covered. I don't even know if you can, right? Our faces are covered when we're out and about. Now, I do believe that you can still tell when people are smiling when they wear a mask, but there really has to be effort there. We have to be even more conscious as we're communicating through this time. And I think we need to make sure that we're really aligning our message. You know, in email, what do we do? Because we're all emailing all the time also, right? We either underline or we use all caps or exclamation marks, right? So what does that mean? Well, it either means you're excited or you're yelling or you're mad or, you know, we're not getting the message through. So we have to make sure. So I'm going to ask for some volunteers. And if you don't want to volunteer, it's okay. You see what I did? I like made it okay, but I kind of want to give you all a little bit of pressure. So it probably does not surprise you that I was an acting major. And then I have my master's in counseling and research in the work I do. But I always think of my training not as learning to pretend, but as learning how to really feel what another person's feeling and how to really have empathy for a character. So we used to do this exercise. And what we would do is we would be given 3 words. And the 3 words that we were given was, I love you. And I am not going to make you say those words. So, you know, feel free to put it out there if you need to. So I gave you a sentence. The meeting was very interesting. And the reality is, if you think about communication, 7% of communication is words. So the words are just what the words are. It's really what you put behind it. So what I'm going to ask is I'm going to ask if anyone wants to volunteer to try to put their camera on and say the meeting was very interesting, but put an emotion behind it. And I have a list of emotions because, of course, you can say the words, I love you, and mean, I am going to kill you tonight, right? I love you can mean, I hate your guts. So I'm going to see if anyone wants to do that. Does anyone want to give it a go? And of course, oh, Jackie, I'm loving that. So you have to take yourself off mute. Can we do that?
Done.
Oh, I love it. So I'm going to ask if you want to say the meeting was very interesting. And in the chat, we're going to see if people can guess the emotion behind it.
That meeting was very interesting.
Ooh. Ooh. What was she trying to tell us? That was great. Do you want to do it one more time?
So that meeting was very interesting.
Sarcastic. Do you think she annoyed? Do you think she thought the meeting was interesting? I don't think so. Right? She wasn't sure. What are you trying to convey, Jackie?
Exactly what everybody picked up.
Right? Right? The word, it's just the word. So we can hide behind the words, or we can make sure that when we're saying something, because that means something totally different. If we get off this webinar and Jackie calls me and she says, wow, that webinar was really interesting. How am I going to feel? All right. Will somebody else do one? Thanks, Jackie. Does anybody else want to give it a try? See it a different way?
I'll do it.
Danielle, you're going to have to put your, well, actually you could put your camera on or not.
I'm trying.
Awesome.
Okay.
Hi.
I wasn't sure.
I love it.
That meeting was very interesting.
Say it again, one more time.
That meeting was very interesting.
How'd you guys feel? What's she trying to tell us? Genuine. Totally agree, Adam. You really thought it was interesting, right?
I really did.
I love it. I don't know what meeting you're talking about, but I'm in.
This is the one we're in now.
Oh, good. Perfect. Perfect. I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So does anybody else want to give it a go before we move on?
I will if you want another person.
What do you say?
I said I will if you want another person.
I do. I want
That
one more.
meeting was very okay. That meeting was very interesting.
Interesting. Okay, do it again.
That meeting was very interesting.
What's she trying to say? Upset? Suspicious? I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure it out. See if you can do more.
That meeting was very interesting. But my enunciation was different each time. And
Right.
I was trying to be PC.
Oh, you're trying to be PC? Yeah, right. So it's
Yeah.
right. I have to be honest, I wasn't sure what was going on, right? I wanted to know more. Well, what if I had made the assumption that you were annoyed with me? Right? What if I made an assumption that you were actually feeling annoyed, that you were like, that meeting was very interesting. And I went off. Is
I
that
would
what
have
you
said that
meant?
meeting was very, yeah.
Is that what you meant, that you were annoyed?
No, I was
Nope.
just, I was totally trying to be PC, but if I was annoyed, I would have said it a little differently. I would have said, oh, that meeting was very interesting.
Right. So I think what we have to do is we have to make sure, right? She was giving what she thought we needed to hear, right? It was PC. She's putting it out there. But we have to make sure that we understand exactly how others are communicating and not tell our own stories. Have you ever said something in a way and you can see the person in front of you isn't getting it? Right? I'm really tired in the morning and I come in and I'm like, hey, good morning. And someone's like, why are you mad at me? Right? We have to check in and we don't ask people, wait a minute, were you annoyed? Or I felt, right, to make people less defensive. I felt you sounded annoyed. We're not always checking in, but we have to be careful because behind every single thing we say, there's feeling, right? Automatically all day long, we have emotion behind every way that we communicate. And the point of this exercise, and it's a interesting exercise to use, is that you really have to make sure that you are aligning your tone and your body language and your voice to really make sure that you're putting across what you need to put across. So I just want to thank the volunteers. Does anyone else have an inkling desire to meeting interesting us? Okay. Megan, are you going to do it?
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay, we'll do this as the last one.
Are you chatting with me?
No.
Well, oh, I'm
So you have
supposed to
to
make
say
up.
the meeting was very interesting with an emotion behind it. Pick something different than the other people. did.
Okay. I missed part of this. Sorry. I was trying to get my video on. Well, now I have stage fright.
Well, I won't make you. I won't make you. Do you want to do it?
The meeting was very interesting.
Oof. All right, do it one more time.
The meeting was very interesting.
Frustrated, annoyed, sarcastic. Is that what you were doing?
Boredom.
Right? So you can see bored. Oh, Paul got that you were bored. Good job. Bummed out, right? You can see how we communicate. So thank you so much to all of you for volunteering. It was really nice of you to do that over Zoom, which I know probably feels really strange. So I really appreciate it, truly. But I think that we really need to pay attention to how we're communicating. And then on the flip side of that, we need to make sure that we're listening to one another, particularly during this time where people are so full of emotion and change. So one of the most sincere forms of respect, I rarely read from my slides, but there's a couple quotes in here that are important. One of the most sincere forms of respect is actually listening to what another has to say. And what is the biggest problem with communication? It's that we often aren't listening to understand. We're listening to respond, right? So I tell you, I went to this great restaurant in the days where I went to restaurants. Sorry. So I tell you, I went to this great restaurant. You're not with me. You're already thinking of your great story. We are rarely really present. So I'm going to give you a homework activity, which I also will send out to you. So what I'm going to have you do is get with another person, and I want you to put a timer on for 1.5 minutes, and you are going to tell someone a story. I find in our lives, we don't often tell each other our stories. So you can tell stories. So your favorite birthday or a great vacation you went on, or a time in your childhood, and you're going to ask the other person just to listen. At the end of that time, you're going to ask them to tell your story back to you. So if I were to say to you, I went to Disney World, it was so great, I had ice cream, the other person would say, you went to Disney World, it was so great, you had ice cream. And then you're going to switch. And what you're going to find is then when you have the pressure to respond back to someone, your listening changes. And you can use it as a way, because typically after you do that exercise, and I've done it with my family, first of all, it'll make your kids tell you stories. That's one, as opposed to just go up into their rooms. But I do this in businesses all over, because we find out things about each other, and we also train our mind to really listen. So there's a golden rule that we've always heard, which is to treat others as you would like to be treated. But I'm just going to say, I really don't feel that that's accurate. I really think we need to treat others as they would like to be treated. And thinking about that lens and thinking about that Anais Nin quote, that we all see the world through our own eyes. It's really important, especially during times of change and upheaval, that we really think about what other people need, because it may be very different from us. Pre-pandemic, right? I'm a hugger. And I always say, if I hugged everyone, I'd go to jail, So we have to be really careful to see what other people need. And by the way, us huggers, we're definitely suffering right now. So it'll be so exciting when we get back to those days. I think also remembering that we don't always know what's going on in people's lives. And around change, when we can have frustration, when other people are reacting in a way that doesn't seem to make sense to us, I go back to this quote. And I wanted to end today talking about how we can all further take care of ourselves. So, it's trite, we say it all the time, but I really believe, for me, the biggest thing that has helped me during times of change and uncertainty is practicing gratitude. And if you asked anyone in my family, they would share, I talk all the time about what I'm grateful for. And we know that if you write down 3 things you're grateful for every day, it will actually increase your happiness. If you look at the happiness advantage, it'll help your mood. So it's really important to me, even in the days that were really dark. And some days at the times in this pandemic where I wanted to be in fetal position on my bed and felt lonely and all the things that I think we've gone through, I might have said, I'm grateful I have a roof over my head, and then it makes you bring back. So I had another consultant say to me, Talia, what are you doing to pamper yourself? And I actually laughed out loud. I thought, things are a little crazy. There's none of that. But what I took from it is that you really need to find something for you. Times are stressful right now. And, there's been a lot of sadness and some hope, and finding some space for you, finding a time, I hope everyone gets outside today, can really help us with our viewpoint of the world. Really going back and asking, am I asking too much of myself? Right? I got 3 kids doing remote school at home. We have people who are working remotely, who are in offices with masks, who've lost their jobs. There's food insecurity. I mean, there's so much going on, and we really need to check in and say, are we asking too much of ourselves, and are we asking too much of others? And really give ourselves some grace. I've had some bad days. I'm giving myself the grace. It's okay. I'm going to pull myself up and move forward. So these are some questions that I will also send out that I think we should really ask ourselves every day. What was I grateful for? Who did I connect with today? Right? There are days where I think I forgot, since I haven't seen many people in person, that I can still connect. And number 3 is really important. What experience of normal did I let go of today? Right? We're not going to go backwards. We're all looking at how we are going to go forward into this new world and new reality. What can I let go of? And did I take a few moments, and did I laugh? So I'm lucky. I'm married to a very funny man. We laugh literally nonstop. And we know that when we laugh, that our endorphins go up. Apparently, we're more attractive when we laugh. So I make sure every day that I'm taking some time to laugh. And if any of you need a laugh, you can look up my husband, he'll make you laugh. And did I give people around me some grace? Because during change, we don't need to be okay. We are all going to travel our curves. So I'm going to end today. And this is truly, truly my favorite quote, Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor. And people asked him, how did you make it through, and how did you survive? And he said, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So something happens to us, and there's a space where we can choose how we want to react to it. And I think of, these are my grandparents. And again, I share this, look at their beautiful smiles. My grandmother was in Auschwitz. My grandfather was in working camps. This was a time they visited me in New York, and they made a choice. And nothing is more powerful for me. So that doesn't mean, sometimes it's hard to make that choice, right? Sometimes you're in the space and you want to choose to look at things from the A perspective, but you're only in the B perspective. That's okay. But I think I try to remind myself that we have a choice. We can always control our own reaction, or we can work to control it, or we can work to shift it. But look at my grandmother's smile. It just inspires me every day. So change can be good, bad, ugly, amazing, stressful. But the truth is, nothing changes if nothing changes. So change is always going to move us forward. And I think the more we think about how we look at it, how others look at it, and where we have some power within it, whether it's intentionality or a response, just really better helps us deal. So I will end with this slide that I think that, I look at how animals look at us, and I think we always have the opportunity to look at them through the way that, look at ourselves the way we see us. And that is it for me. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. I just want to really thank JFS and thank Jenny for having me today. And I really genuinely want to thank you all for spending the hour with me. I hope it was helpful.
Talia, thank you so much for this enlightening and incredible presentation in which everyone looked captivated as I did get to scroll through and look at all these faces. So truly thank you for such an incredible presentation on behalf of JFS. If anyone has any questions, feel free to chime in right now. And Talia, most heartfelt thank you, truly.
Thank you.
I'm just looking through.
And I will also say, you know, please, you'll have my email. Feel free to reach out to me if there's something you don't want to write in the chat or whatever. I really am here to help. So let me know if I can be helpful. Maurice, oh, you're on mute.
I hate that.
I know, it's the worst.
One thing I got out of this is because I realized that the words don't make up the full communication package. I didn't realize it was so limited, but we really need to listen with our eyes open.
Yeah, it's so true. So true. Thank you for that feedback. I totally agree.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Thanks. It was amazing, Tyler. Thank you. Just
Thanks, Jen.
in such a short space of time, I learned so much. Thank you. What I want to ask you is, do you believe that everybody can be brought from that first phase, at least to the second phase, if not the third, of change, of loss? Because, you know, I've come across at least one individual who, when we had to shut down our school and move to Zoom, still cannot move beyond those feelings of loss. And I just wondered, do you think it's possible that we can move everybody out of at least that first phase? Or do I need to learn how to manage somebody in that first phase forever?
Well, look, based on research, and I mean, there's research or there's my personal opinion. I mean, I do think that some people can't. If I'm being really honest, I mean, I do believe in everyone's ability to change if they want to. And that's a Talia belief. I mean, I do believe people can change personally. But I do think that some people, and if you look at that graph, some people are still there at the end. And there are certain strategies you can use. Some of it might be just explain, you know, share that graph so they can have an enlightened moment of where they are. And I'm happy to talk strategies about that. But I think for some people, they get stuck in all the phases, which is why I kind of like that graph, because the reality is we don't all transition through, and some people transition through so quickly. So I do think people do get stuck because they have to really be open to and want to, but sometimes sharing with them the information might be a light bulb moment that they're stuck. So let's totally talk about that offline.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that one thing I've started to do is if I'm in a down mood or I'm feeling bitchy, I let those around me know that it's me and it's not them, and that I'm just having a hard day. And I think that's kind of helped, whereas before I never would have done that.
Carol, I think that is huge. I really do. It's like if we would just tell people where we are, then they don't have to guess.
Yes.
Right. So I always joke, it doesn't mean we can be like, I'm an awful person today, so suck it up, you know. But I bet the people around you appreciate that so much. I think that is huge, and I think it's powerful, and it's and people are forgiving. They know you're just having a bad day, or you have a migraine, or what, you know, whatever's going on with you. If we're open about it, it helps so much. That's awesome.
Thank you everyone so much. Talia, once again, thank you for this incredible presentation. We're so grateful.
Thank you so much. Thanks
Good
everyone.
day,
Have a great
everyone.
day. Try to get outside.
Bye.
Enjoy. Bye.